Hi, this video is for my third graders that were reading from the BFG. And last week we read Dream Catching. So this week we're going to be continuing with Trogglehumper for the Fleshlumpeater. So they is always having filthy winks before they goes scrumping off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said. He stopped for a few moments to let Sophie have a better look. Giants is only sleeping every then and now, he said. Not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that a human being who is 50 is been spending about 20 years sleeping fast? I must admit that never occurred to me, Sophie said. You should allow it to occur to you, the BFG said. Imagine it, please. This human being who says he is 50 has been fast asleep for 20 years and is not even knowing where he is, not even doing anything, not even thinking. That is a funny thought, Sophie said. Exactly, the BFG said. So what I is trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he is 50 is not 50, he is only 30. What about me? Sophie said. I'm 8. You is not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies and little childers is spending half their time sleeping, so you is only 4. I'm 8, Sophie said. You may think you is 8, the BFG said, but you has only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. You is only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titchy little snapper whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who is hundreds of years more than you. How do you giants sleep? Sophie said. Well, they is never wasting time doing snozzling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough. Well, when do you sleep? Sophie asked. Even less, the BFG answered. I is sleeping only once in a blue baboon. Sophie, peeping out from her pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now than when they were awake. Sprawled out across the yellow plain, they covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying on their backs with their enormous mouths wide open, and they were snoring like foghorns, the most awful noise. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air. By gum frog, he cried. I was just having the most wopsy-whiffling idea. What? Sophie said. Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. You just wait and see what I is going to bring about. And he galloped off fast to his cave, and Sophie was hanging on tight to the rim of the pocket. He rolled back the stone, and he entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving quickly. You stay here in this pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We is doing this lovely bit of buck swashing both together. He laid aside the dream-catching net, but hung on to the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing, the one that he'd been carrying around when Sophie had first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. What is he up to now? Sophie wondered. Peep your head up good, the BFG said. Then you will get a fine winkle of what is going on. The BFG came near to the sleeping giants, and he slowed his pace. He began moving softly. He crept on his toes toward the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. Then they looked repulsive, filthy, diabolical. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, the child chewer. Then he stopped. He had reached the Fleshlumpeater. He pointed at him, and then he looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. He knelt on the ground, and very quickly he opened the suitcase. He took out of it a glass jar that was containing the terrible, nightmarish Trogglehumper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. Ouch, she thought. This would be rather dangerous. She crouched lower in the pocket so that only the top of her head and her eyes were showing. She wanted to be ready to duck out of sight very fast should anything go wrong. They were about 10 feet away from the Fleshlumpeater's face. The snorting sound that he was making was disgusting. Every now and again, a big bubble of spit formed between his 2 open lips, and then it would burst with a splash and cover his face with saliva. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squiggling, squirmy, faintly scarlet Trogglehumper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips. He aimed the instrument directly at the Fleshlumpeater's face. He took a deep breath and puffed out his cheeks, and then, woof, he blew. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting towards the giant's face. For a split second, it hovered above the face, and then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up the giant's nose, but it had all happened so quickly, Sophie couldn't be sure. "We had better be skittling away quick to where it is safe," the BFG whispered, and he trotted off for about 100 yards, and then he stopped, and he crouched down low to the earth. "Now," he said, "we is waiting for the gun and flames to begin." They didn't have to wait long. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the Fleshlumpeater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up from the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wiggle and twist and bounce about to the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch. "Yow!" roared the Fleshlumpeater. "Yow!" "He's still asleep," the BFG whispered. "The terrible troggle-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him." "Serves him right," Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for this great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps. "Save us!" screamed the Fleshlumpeater, thrashing about mildly. "He's after me! He's getting me!" The thrashing of limbs and the waving of arms became more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch such a massive creature having such a mighty convulsion. "It's Jack!" bellowed the Fleshlumpeater. "It's the gruesome, gruntious Jack! Jack is after me! Jack is crackling me! Jack is spike-sticking me! Jack is splash-plunking me! It's the terrible, fright-swimping Jack!" The Fleshlumpeater was writhing about over the ground like some colossal, tortured snake. "Oh, spare me, Jack!" he yelled. "Don't hurt me, Jack!" "Who is this Jack he's on about?" Sophie whispered. "Jack is the only human beings all the giants is frightened of," the BFG told her. "They is all absolutely terrified of Jack. They is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer." "Save me!" screamed the Fleshlumpeater. "Have mercy on this poor little giant, that beanstalk. He is coming at me with his terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Take it away. I's begging you, Jack. I's praying you not touch me with your terrible spike-sticking beanstalk." "Us giants," the BFG whispered, "is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We is knowing only that he is a famous giant killer and that he is owning something called a beanstalk. We is knowing about also that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing and that Jack uses it to kill giants." Sophie could not stop smiling. "What are you griggling at?" the BFG asked her, slightly nettled. "I'll tell you later," Sophie said. The awful nightmare had now gripped the great brute to such an awful extent that he was tying his whole body into knots. "Don't do it, Jack," he screeched. "I was not eating you, Jack. I has never eaten human beings. I swear I has never gobbled a single human being in all my wholesome life." "Liar," said the BFG. Just then, one of the Fleshlumpeater's flailing fists caught the still fast asleep, meat-dripping giant smack in his mouth. At the same time, one of his furiously thrashing legs kicked the snoring, gizzard-gulping giant right in the guts. Both the injured giants woke up and leapt to their feet. "He's swiping me right in the mouth," yelled the meat dripper. "He is bung-swoggling me right in the guts," shouted the gizzard gulper. The two of them rushed at the Fleshlumpeater and began pounding him with their fists and their feet. The wretched Fleshlumpeater woke up with a bang, and he awoke straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into battle, and in the bellowing, thumping, rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another either got stepped on or kicked. Soon all 9 of them were on their feet, having the most almighty free-for-all. They punched and kicked and scratched and bit and butted each other as hard as they could. Blood flowed, noses were crunched, teeth fell out like hailstones. The giants roared and screamed and cursed, and for many minutes the noise of battle rolled across the yellow plain. The BFG smiled a big wide smile of absolute pleasure. "I is loving it when they is all having a good toughin' rumble," he said. "They'll kill each other," Sophie said. "Never," the BFG answered. "Those beasts is always bishing and walloping at one another. Soon it will be getting dusky, and they'll be galloping off to fill their tummies." "They're coarse and foul and filthy," Sophie said. "I hate them." And as the BFG headed back to the cave, he said quietly, "We certainly was putting that nightmare to good use, wasn't we?" "Excellent use," Sophie said. "Well done, you." All right. So that's the end of that chapter. So I'll have to write that one down to make sure I make note that we have now read the Trogglehumpers. And the next chapter that we're going to read is called Dreams. So what happens with the rest of the dreams that they caught. All right. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed getting to continue reading our book together. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.